Yeah, so it's kind of been it's been a pretty cool process, like putting this together from my first episode. That this is you're the 31st.
I still remember you coming in to blend it the very first time, telling
Yeah.
me like what you're kind of looking to do, and I can't believe that was like 3-4 years ago now.
Yeah, I would have just got into real estate. It would have been my
Yeah.
first year. I knew you were doing your stuff with Rally
Yeah.
marketing, and I knew you previously from when you first opened the gym and hosted your first podcast or powerlifting competition.
Yeah.
And yeah, I kind of just kept tabs on, things that are going around in the area. And I seen you open your marketing business, and I was like, man, I'm really lacking in that department. So maybe he'd want to give me a few pointers. And, to my surprise, you were like, yeah, man, absolutely. Come in. I'll have a chat with you. No problem. It was very refreshing especially that time of year. We're going through the pandemic and all that stuff. And it was real tough to get in front of people.
Yeah.
So just to have somebody that want to, even give me a few tidbits was awesome. And funny you were talking about like video ads and everything in that first meeting too. And I thought back about our conversation a little while ago, and I think you must have been applying some of Alex Hermosi's stuff then, because you're like, I know exactly how much money I need to put in behind this ad spend to get my members back to, whatever the quota was. And I was like, how the frig do you know that?
Do you know what? I mean, I'm a huge fan of Alex.
Yeah.
I've read his books.
I just lent his 2 books to my buddy.
Yeah. I mean, his stuff's fantastic. But my obsession over numbers came well before that, like back in my days working for Johnson & Johnson.
Okay.
And I mean, when I got hired with J&J, I was like 22 years old or something like that, and they moved me to Vancouver. And I was one of the youngest reps that they had ever hired in that division. And my whole kind of strategy was making more calls than everyone else. And at that time, I mean, we're back, gosh, it would have been like 2009-ish. So, I mean, apps and things like that weren't as readily available. But there was a program, and I can't even remember what the name of it was, but it helped you route your kind of like day.
Okay.
It was kind of like Google Maps in a sense, but I could type in all the doctor's offices that I wanted to see that day, and it would provide me with the fastest route to see all of them.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
FedEx and all them use the same stuff, right?
Do they?
Yeah, I think so, because we used it when I was the territory rep for Unilever. So we were mapping out new territories for our sales reps across Atlantic.
Yeah.
And I think it was either UPS or FedEx, or maybe they all used it. And I think it's like was yours all based on like right turns as well? Because like left turns took you too much time because you're cutting in down coming traffic and different things.
Well, I can't remember exactly. I mean, it was so long ago, but the problem that I saw within the industry as a whole was like a lot of reps were making an appointment with a doctor on the one side of Vancouver as an example. And then all of a sudden you drive across the entire city to see another doctor, and then you drive back, and like it was so inefficient. And I mean, the requirement with J&J at the time was that you had to make 8 calls in a day.
Yeah.
And I was making on average 10 to 12 purely just out of hard work and kind of, I'd say, efficiency with regards to my travel time. And so when I won my first President's Club, my boss's boss came out with me at the time and was like, okay, like, what's the secret? Like, how are you doing this? You're a kid, and, you're one of our best sales reps across all of Canada and North America. And I was like, well, this is my strategy. Like, it's just a numbers game. I'm actually your worst sales rep. I just make, every single day I'm making an extra 2 calls. That's 10 more calls a week. That's another 500 calls a year than your average rep is making. I was like, you sit in front of 500 extra people a year?
Yeah, like, see what happens.
Yeah, I can be a shit rep and still make more sales than anyone else.
Yeah, it's funny, and it's just like I keep like, because you're here and we've been talking about it. It's like I just see the parts of like Alex's book where he's like, you can have a shitty, your shitty product and still sell a lot of it if you just do the right stuff. And it's like, yeah, if you're not the best, well, just do more work than everybody else. And guess what? I mean, numbers win.
Yeah.
You know,
I know it's not magic.
It's not magic.
It's just not sexy. That's the problem with all this stuff, is that it's just, you know, Alex talks about this in his content all the time, is that it's just like putting in the boring work consistently day in, day out. I mean, that's the fitness industry as a whole. I mean, so many people are constantly going on searching for that next fad, that next like sexy diet. Yeah, it's like, how do I lose, 10 pounds in 6 weeks or
what's
20
that new
pounds in 6
diabetic
weeks?
drug that everybody's using?
Ozempic.
Yeah.
Oh
Man, what is wrong with people?
I mean, that could send us off on an hour tangent.
I know. It's like, just put the fork down, guys.
I know.
Do some
hard work. That'll help. I mean, that's
right.
Basically the design of the drug is to suppress your appetite.
I know, but a little self-control could go a long way too for some people, I think.
I mean, it's so deep. I mean, it's self-control.
I know.
I was emailing with a member this morning, and they had sat down with me. Her and her husband sat down with me just a couple of days ago, and we were talking about nutrition. They were talking in their email reply was just like, I'm so motivated coming out of that. I was like, great. I was like, motivation is a great way to start. But I mean, the reality of it is that you need to get determination and, dedication in order to continue that journey. I mean, motivation will get you through a week, 2 weeks, a month, maybe even like 3 months. But I mean, the dedication and determination is what's going to create that habit that's going to instill, the journey that you're going to be on realistically for the rest of your life. Like, I'm 37 years old. I think more about 80 than I do about 40.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, 40 is a few years away.
Right.
I know what I need to do to be healthy at 40. I'm doing it day in and day out right now for the most part. To be healthy when I'm 80, I don't need to deadlift 400 pounds.
No.
Right? Like, all I need to be doing is hinging in some form or fashion.
Yeah, just keep greasing them hips up. Right?
Yeah, like, I mean, the reality is that 80 is what prevents people from being independent at that age is pretty much the fact that they lose the ability to function on day-to-day tasks.
Yeah, their
like
mobility.
Picking up their shoes or something like that, right? Sitting on the toilet. Like, those are the things that you have to maintain. I mean,
getting in the bathtub, out of the bathtub.
Exactly. Yeah. So like that functional fitness that we teach inside Blended day in and day out. I mean, people oftentimes get really caught up on the goal that they have that's, 6 weeks, 6 months down the road. But I mean, at the end of the day, is like, if you have a bigger picture towards what you really want to accomplish, which is independence in your 80s and 90s, then when you go through, like, I just went through surgery last week, and it's like, I can't for the next couple of weeks bench press, clean, snatch,
do anything,
do a push-up, anything like that. I mean, basically my wrist is completely immobile right now. I've still worked out 5 days this week.
Right, but you did what you could.
Yeah.
You weren't just like, I'm taking some time off.
Completely. My wrist is making my 6-month goals unachievable, but it's not affecting my goals that I want when I'm 80.
Do you feel like that's where people kind of fall off, or like, kind of lose sight of what the real objective is? Like, they're too focused on like that short term versus like, looking out a little bit further on, where's this health journey really taking me? Is it just to get shredded to go to my down south beach vacation, or is it longevity? Like, where do you find people really kind of hit or miss there?
I don't think that's even specific to the fitness industry. Think about your experience going through creating content now over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Like, how many views did you have on episode 1
None.
in comparison to episode 30?
Oh, like 10x.
Exactly. Right? Like,
I'm deep into SEO now.
Yeah.
So now it's like one of my episodes got like 1,500 views.
Still to this day, one of the most visited pages that we have on our website, Blended, is a blog post on loaded carries that we wrote in 2020.
A blog post?
Yep.
Really? It's still driving traffic.
And it still drives more traffic than, other than like our homepage, our personal training page, and like some of like our main pages. It drives more traffic to our site than any other page on our entire site. And we wrote that 4 years ago.
And it still maintains its relevancy. That's awesome.
It's a great example of how SEO can kind of change your business. And once we get them to the page, they read that blog post, then all of a sudden they end up
Oh, what's this?
drifting to another page, making an inquiry, and, you know, hopefully, ideally, becoming a member at some point in time.
Well, I think we kind of breezed through it briefly when we spoke last at our last meeting together. Like, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if it wasn't for social media. Because I'll be totally honest, for anybody that's watching, I didn't do the traditional stuff. I tried it, but I didn't do like the more than everybody else. I was like, oh, this sucks. Door knocking, people slamming doors in my face, like, oh, what are you doing here? It's COVID. Like, does it, you know, just like you felt almost like a leper. Like, you know, nobody wanted to look at you, talk to you.
Yeah.
And open houses, you know, I'm an open book, man. Like, I didn't even feel like I belonged there at the start. So I couldn't even, you know, you got to work open houses. Like, you know, everybody's dream is they go to an open house and the realtor just doesn't even say anything to them. Well, they got their dream when I started, because I was so intimidated by the whole thing that, you know, I didn't really do what you were supposed to. So then I was like, well, how am I going to get my name out there if I don't want to do these things? Which, I'll be honest, I'm doing them now.
Yeah.
But I built my confidence up by learning real estate through like the storytelling or the tips and the, you know, if you need to buy, do this. If you need to sell, you know, here's 3 tips. And then it got to a point where I built up such a repertoire of videos and content. Well, it's like I'm not putting these out there and just like forgetting what I said or what I put together. So it's kind of like a dual-edged sword. Like, it was sharpening me, my skills, my knowledge. And then as the videos got, you know, more numerous, you know, my confidence grew. Leads started coming in. Started getting sales. Then I was like, oh, wow, I'm like a real realtor now. And then it just snowballed. So it's like I had a guy, he was doing a little sales meeting for us. Every Thursday they have an Ask Us Anything. The brokers put it on at our office, and it's like you literally go, and sometimes it's just open forum, ask whatever, and sometimes they have a guest in, usually from our brokerage, you know, higher producing agents, or, you know, telling their story, because it's tough, right? And one guy said he spent 10 grand on mailouts. And I was like, man. And I just read Alex's books, and I was like, I think I'd rather spend 10 grand on ad spend.
Yeah.
Because at least, you know, that mail out, yeah, maybe it sits on Buddy's desk or the kitchen table for a couple weeks, then it's going in the trash. Maybe you get something, maybe you don't. And I don't know the exact conversion on, like, if you put your, you know, format your ad up right, but I think you'd get a lot more turnaround out of an investment into social media content advertising rather than the old traditional method.
I mean, the thing that going back to, you know, Rally and having owned the marketing company, the question isn't whether or not that the mail out was a right decision or wrong decision. The question that I have is, how are they tracking that?
Exactly. Analytics.
And if they are, and you're getting a certain number of leads for the amount of mail outs and the dollar that you spent, and those leads are converting better than the leads that you would have done on social media, then 100%, like, keep doing mailouts. But a lot of people will just go into it and they'll just be like, okay, here's my picture and my name and my number, and they'll put it on a mailout and send it out and hope and pray.
Yeah, there's no real value there, really. Like, there's not, like, the offer's not really packaged up, you know.
Yeah, it has to have some sort of call to action on it that you as the owner can track, and then ultimately see whether or not it's something that's worth investing in again in the future.
Yeah, and that's the big thing for me. It's like another thing, it's like the billboard signs.
Yeah.
How do you track that?
Well, there's certainly ways that you can do it.
Is there?
Yeah, I mean, QR codes
Right.
are one way, right? So, I mean, you have a unique QR code on a billboard. But again, it's like, how many people, if you're put a billboard on a busy street, you're not going to stop on the street and
that's what I'm saying,
scan
right.
your QR code. But a billboard on, like, a bus stop,
Right.
right, where
I'm just
someone's
thinking Barrington
standing there.
Street, like, everybody.
Yeah. So, I mean, you have to have something that's unique that provides people with a reason to come to you. And then your team on top of that needs to be able to say, okay, like what brought you in today? And then if they're saying, oh, I saw your billboard, then are you tracking that?
Yeah, that's one thing. I'm glad you mentioned it. Like, I get the odd rent, not a ton, but like a lot of it's like warm leads, people that have been on my page, or once in a while I'll get a random call, which is great, from somebody I have no idea who they are. And I ask, I was like, hey, before we wrap up here, do you mind me asking, like, how'd you land on me? Like, how'd you find me? Like, what drove you to give me a call? And then they'll either say like, oh, well, we Google searched you and you come up because like my SEO is pretty good on Google right now. If you look up like Halifax agent, and I track that with the file. So it's like, I know where it's coming from. And it's like we said, it's important to know where business is coming from, because then you can double down in those areas or tweak it and make it better so you can get more.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I guess I'm a little late on the intro, but Dave Rafuse from Blended Athletics. Appreciate you coming on. But, man, how many years has it been since you guys been open now?
We opened Blended November of 2013. So just over 10 years. That's
crazy. What would be a few like lessons you learned kind of starting your own business? Like, if people were wondering, like if they were curious to, open their own gym or their own side hustle, like what's some stuff you did right, maybe you did wrong? And
yeah, I mean, that's a loaded question that we could have done a whole podcast, I'd say, on that alone. We
can have you on again.
Yeah. I mean, right out of the gate, I opened Blended, I was 26 years old.
That's amazing.
And when we opened the doors, I thought I had it figured out before we opened the doors.
Really?
Yes. I had like financial projections in place for 3 years, which the reality of it is you need to in order to present to the bank
Business
to
plan,
get a loan and so on and so forth. And I was like, this is what's going to happen in month 3, 6, 9, 12, so on and so forth.
All mapped out.
Fuck.
That look
shit
says it
does
all.
not go to plan.
Right.
And I mean, especially early on, what I basically learned was that, planning is important. I have projections done out for the next 2 years.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And I'd say I'm way more accurate today than what I was 10 years ago with regards to those projections. So it's necessary, but at the same time, day one employee, we ran 4 classes at the gym, and on day 1 we had 5 people walk through our door. I was like, oh shit.
All right.
Yeah. I mean, I moved my wife back from Vancouver. Like, we were living in Vancouver at the time. We moved back to Halifax and opened the doors to the gym. And I mean, we were kids. We didn't know anything at the time. And we just started grinding. In between classes, I would go out to jump in the car in between classes, and I'd take a little brochure and I'd drop it off to every single business in Burnside.
Nice.
Just introducing myself, being like, hey, like I just opened up a gym up the street. And slowly but surely we started to see some traffic coming through the door. And obviously, referrals are huge. So by the time we started putting together a really good product, those people started bringing their friends in. And eventually, by the time we got to the end of year 1, we had 100 people through the door. And, now 10 years later, we've got a team of 18 people. We've expanded the gym, 3 big expansions. So we started off with 6,000 square feet. In 2015, we went to just over 9,600 square feet. Now we're just over 11,000 square feet. And even within those like major expansions, we had made minor ones. I'll tell you, the best piece of advice in all of the years that actually, whether it's advice or the biggest mistake I ever made, was that first expansion.
Was it?
Yep, absolutely. It was, was like doubling down on our overhead. And at that point in time, we were growing, and I had a really good team, 4 people, but at the time, really good team. I was like, okay, I got this idea. We could double basically our space. We're going to increase the amount of classes that we're running. We're going to start doing some personal training, so on and so forth. And again, I was a kid and I was like, I'm going to be the project manager for this. And I quite literally, not only was I the project manager, I was the professional painter at the time as well.
Okay.
And as we were adding that space, we would close up the gym at 9:00 and I would go next door and I would paint until 1 a.m. I'd wake up, be back in the gym to start running class at 6 a.m. And I would do that over and over and over. And it just like, not only did I get to the point where I was completely trashed, like it just can't function. And through that whole time, those 3 months while we were building out that space, I stopped doing our lead generation because I spent all of my time, all of my extra time that I had essentially trying to work on this expansion and grow it. And then all of a sudden we were finished. We opened the doors to it and no one was coming through the door again. I was like, what did I do wrong?
Right.
I mean, we just opened up this awesome new space. And, we went from having like incrementally 10, 15 new people a month join the gym to like 0. And my funnel went dry.
Because you just dropped it.
I just stopped doing the work that I needed to do day in and day out.
Nobody knew the expansion was coming.
No.
Man.
And then I opened up a marketing company. But I mean, going back to like your conversation is like, when you started creating content, industry specific content, it was almost an opportunity for you to learn.
100%.
And I mean, for me, we hired a marketing team, like, at Rally at the time when I sold it, like we had 7 people there. So I was more of a managing role than I was like actually coming up with the actual material and doing like SEO. I don't even know how to do SEO stuff myself. I know what I want, but I don't know actually how to execute on it. And so, I mean, we were hiring for that. But for me, part of it was like, I want to know more about this. Like, I want to have a really good understanding of marketing. I mean, my career as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, like it's just starting. You look at who I would idolize and, you look at Warren Buffett and, he's like 86 years old or something like that right now. So, I mean.
And he only made most of his wealth when he was older, right?
Well, I mean, he was a millionaire by the time he was 30.
Okay, well.
But I mean,
I retract.
But with regards to like overall, like absolutely. Like
okay.
He'd made most of his wealth later on, but that's due to his like whole theory around compound interest and kind of how he built his entire career to begin with. But even still, it's like he's 86 or so, and we'll need to look that up.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got basically 36 more years.
Yeah, I think you find people are just short-sighted. Like, I find everybody in their 20s now needs to be a TikTok superstar, influencer, millionaire, driving a Lambo. And it's like, man, I remember 20-year-old Chris. He was an idiot. Like,
the best part is in 10 years, you're going to look back and be like,
this guy's an idiot.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
So it's like, I'm just focused on like, execution. And then it's like when you first start doing content, nobody's watching. And then over time, it's like Alex says, like, just do more. Like, put out content, then focus on making it better. So that's kind of how it started. It was like I just did content. You look at some of my first stuff, scroll down if you want. It sucks. It looks not great. I'm trying different weird hooks. Like I'm doing stuff that's not really me, trying to find my way. And then finally, eventually, you get one that kind of hooks into the algorithm and you get some traction. And then you can kind of analyze what you did there, try and recreate it. And now a lot of times it's like that's exactly what I do. If something goes well, I'll look at what I did, how I worded it, what did I say, what was my tone, and then you kind of try and build off that. And it's like anything. I think things take more time than people realize. It's like you can't just be an overnight success.
It happens.
It does.
Right? But I mean,
very
that's not
seldom.
what you can bank on.
Yeah. You always get the 1 or 2 people that it's just, they get in and it's just boom and they make it. And is that because it's who they are, or is it luck, or what is it? Who knows? Are they better networked? Are they, did somebody help set them up? Like, you could go down that rabbit hole forever, but it's just like, and I think that's what kind of kills some people's comparison.
Yeah.
And
Agreed.
I think there's a time and a place. Like, I think comparison is okay to a degree, but then if you like obsess over what you're doing, and then it's like, it's like your expansion. You went all in doing that, painting, doing all this stuff, and then your lead funnel dried up. Well, it's the same thing. If you're so focused on X and you're not focused on that, then you're not going to make it.
Well, I mean, the looking at the bright side of that story is when we went into our next expansion and we went to the 11,000 square feet, I knew what I screwed up on the first time around. And so we doubled down the opposite way. And I had a project manager that looked after everything. The gym was getting built out the way that I wanted it to be done. I just trusted that process was being handled. And I put all of my effort at that point in time into marketing to make sure that when those doors did open, that we had people just running through the door. And that's exactly what happened. When we did that expansion right before COVID, unfortunately, but like in 2020, we had in January, February, March, our biggest months that we had ever had leading into the close down for COVID. But leading into that, and as we were going through that expansion, they were the biggest months we ever had.
Yeah, it's one of those adages, reminds me, I think I heard it from jiu-jitsu. And it's, jiu-jitsu is a pretty tough sport to get into. Like, it's like life. Like, it's kind of going to beat you down for a bit until you figure it out. Like, you start as a white belt, and like, I'm a 3rd degree purple belt. There's brown belts, black belts. Like, it's going to be tough for a while. But like, every round you don't win, like, just look at it as a learning. So we always said, like, if you don't win, you learn. And the only way you fail completely is if you quit. So if you never quit and you keep moving forward, like, you'll figure it out.
That goes for everything.
Everything.
I mean, use that in fitness for
all
me.
of it.
How many people we have that walk in our doors, it's like, Dave, I did this like diet fitness plan for 6 months, had great success, got to here, lost 20 pounds, whatever it may have been. And then I put it all back on, so it didn't work. And I failed. Like, no, like through that 6 months, you learned a lot. You learned at the end of it what you can't do the next time, right? And as long as you have that right mindset, then, I mean, to your point, it's like when you learn, then from there, like, it's only up.
Yeah, and people think like, say you did, like your expansion, you tried, and let's just call it kind of it initially kind of failed. And it's like, oh, we got to start from square one. But it's like, no. You already did all this stuff, so you don't have to start at the bottom again. You start from what you've built up and learned. And it's like, yeah, okay, I dropped the ball here, but now I know what I did wrong, so I'm not going to do that again.
Yep.
And then you hired, your project manager, and you kept on the right side of things. And then although COVID kind of kicked us in the pants,
yeah,
you were doing, driving good results from that learning. So It's like, yeah, I think everybody's just a little too, like, almost like get rich quick. Like, they want it right now. Yeah. And then if it doesn't work, it's just, okay, I guess I'm done. And then they don't really pursue it or move forward or try and learn from their mistakes. And man, if I didn't want to learn from my mistakes, like I said, like I probably would have quit and been some district manager for some other company.
Yeah.
But, like you, like, I'll burn the candle at both ends till it just burns So, luckily for me, I could, sustain it. And, but it's like you say, like, all these struggles and painting till it's crazy, stupid o'clock in the morning. Like, nobody's seen any of that. All people see today is the nice little Instagram squares where everything's hunky-dory, and it's like Dave, the successful gym owner, entrepreneur, or people say even today, like, oh, it looks like you're killing it. And it's like, yeah, but you don't see the rest of it.
Yeah, it's true.
You don't see that I'm doing 2 open houses a weekend at times, showings in between, getting my, like, I got an Easter egg hunt event going, like we're doing home shows. You know, there's all this stuff going on in the background, and, you know, the only thing that I put out there that people see right on their phone is, like, you know, 3 reels from this podcast or some tips and tricks or a house tour. It looks all glamorous, or like I sold this or bought that. And
how many realtors do you know that have put the effort and money into a setup like this to be able to sit down and have conversations with other people? And to your point, picking out like a couple clips from it in order to make some content that, you know, that following's going to see.
Yeah, none.
Yeah, I don't know of any.
Really? Yeah. There's a couple out there, but, you know, I'm always like, I like to learn. I like to learn from different people through their experiences. And I think it's a good way for other people to maybe take tidbits out of it too. So it's just a nice way to switch things up, have like some genuine conversation with somebody that does cool stuff, and share it with the rest of the people. And, you know, I think there's some value there in just trying to help everybody, I guess.
And if there's not, there's that value there for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But, yeah, and it's been very well received. Like, and man, like, as much as I think I've made some progress with the content, like, I made a little video on like the new ferry. And I took some time because I was thinking, okay, instead of just making it one cut and like it doesn't like jump cut or do any stuff or any images, I was like, I'll put a little more effort into this, because like I read that Alex's book. So I was like, okay, well, I've done a lot, so maybe I can try and do maybe not too much less, but make it better. And TikTok, I've never ever really got the hang of. It was always like Instagram was like the good performer. Mm-hmm. Anything I put that did well on Instagram didn't do that great on TikTok. And then I made this little video about the new ferry service that's coming to Mill Cove, Bedford area. And that one took right off. It's got like 2,500 views or something. But it's like, for the life of me, I can't figure out. There's like, you know, 900 on Instagram. And it's like, well, is the algorithms that different? You know, I thought I knew what I was doing. And now it's just like, has something changed? Because now everything that's performing on TikTok that wasn't before, it's like flip-flopped.
Yep. So
it's like tough to keep up with this whole content game. And it's like, you got to be everywhere. Yep. YouTube, Snapchat. Just got back on that. Not good at it. Barely know how to use it. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, you know, still do a little bit of Facebook, but yeah, man. Where do you guys find like you get your biggest ROI?
Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah, Meta.
Yeah. Well, I mean, our average member age is 38 years old.
So they'd be more the Facebook demographic.
Yeah,
Instagram.
So we certainly tailor our content, our marketing towards like 30 to 60-year-olds. Not that those individuals aren't on TikTok, but we haven't figured TikTok out. We haven't even tried. Man, it's like you said, it's so hard to keep up with all of these different platforms. And there's only so much that you can do. And so for us, we kind of came to the realization that we were going to invest the majority of our time on creating content, which goes up to, perform as SEO on our web page, utilize Instagram and Facebook as much as we possibly can, and then just let the other ones kind of slide for now.
Yeah, sometimes I get like to the point where it's just like, okay, well, I made a reel, or maybe I made 3. It's like, okay, well, now I got to post it to every platform. And it's like, you know, and I was using like Buffer, but I found, I don't know, Buffer advertises that there's no hindrance on like view count or this or that. But like, you know, for instance, like you can't put your thumbnail how you want it for YouTube Shorts. You can't do your tags through Buffer. Like, so you got to go in and do it anyway. Yeah. So, and then, you know, maybe Buffer will hear this because I canceled my subscription, but like every time I tried to do it on my phone, it'd be like upload failed. And I waste more time trying to re-upload to Buffer than I could have did it in all platforms in the time it took for me to figure around with it.
Yeah.
But the few times that it did work well, I found like, I mean, maybe it's just me and I just had it stuck in my head, but I just found like the viewership wasn't as good as if I manually posted it. Have you have had any experience with that? Do you use scheduling or?
Yeah, we do, and we've noticed the same things.
Really?
Yeah.
And they all say that they don't.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. Don't have an answer for you.
But you would have noticed similar trends.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I kind of was like, well, one, it's not working right for me because I'm doing it on my phone half the time. Because the whole point would be, like I can do it on the run. So I'm going to sit at my computer and do it. Well, then it means probably have the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just could never figure out because I test every once in a while. I do like one on my own. And I mean, I'm not saying it'd be like thousands of views more. It'd be like maybe a few 500, which is significant based on like most of my content probably averages around like, I don't know, thousands, maybe high if you take my whole database of content. But we'll say 750 views per piece.
Yeah.
And then I'd find like something I'd post on Buffer be like 450, 500 if it was good.
Yeah.
If it was crap, then it was crap. Like, it didn't matter. But.
Now, the one thing to take away, though, from it is you still had 400 people, 500 people viewing it. It's like, imagine going back into, like, your sales background, how much effort and time it would take to go out and deliver that same message to 400 people.
A lot.
A lot
you
of
couldn't
time.
do it. Well, I mean, you could, but it'd be the amount of time you'd have to allot to do it versus.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just wouldn't quite add up to the same reach.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the other thing. It's like I was talking with this colleague of mine from Remax out in Toronto, Cash Levy, and he's like he does some cool stuff, man. He's very creative. Like he does like little skits and like spoofs and like very creative, like well beyond. I shouldn't say I might be able to do it. Anybody can do whatever they want, I think, if they want to try. But yeah, he does these little skits, and he puts a lot of work into it, and he's like a high-producing agent. And I was like, I had a call with him, because I like to learn. Like, anybody that wants to talk to me, I'm happy to kind of dig in and see, like, what are you doing that works, and how are you doing this, and we'll see how much some people keep everything close to the chest, but he was wide open book, and he was like, man, he's like, I do it all myself. And I was like, well, what do you say to people that are like, oh, I can't do that, it's too much work, or it's too much time, or, oh no, you should be doing open houses or door knocking? And he's exactly to your point. He's like, how many people are you going to see at an open house? I go, well, I don't know. The other week I had like 10 to 12 people come through. He's like, okay. It's like the last reel that I put out. Now he does like in the thousands, like 5, 10, 50, 35,000 views. He's like, I can't touch that many people at an open house.
Yeah.
And then I can't make content if I'm at the open house. So he's like, honestly, he's like, you can choose to do whatever you want or a combination of things. But he's like, honestly, man, if you just want to blast your message out there, screw mailouts, billboards, door knocking, open houses. He's like, I'm not even good at them. And he's like, I make X level at Remax. And I was like, oh. He's like, yeah, I invest all my free time outside of my family time. And he's got like 5 kids. Just had another one. And he's like, content all the way. He's like, if you ask me, don't listen to anybody telling you anything else.
Yeah.
He's like, how much business have you got from social media? I was like, honestly, Cash, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for it. He's like, well, what are you asking me for then? Double down.
Yeah.
Go lean in harder.
And I mean, the reality is that's not the answer for others.
Right.
Right. So, when you look at media creation, whether it be video, written, so blog posts and stuff like that, or audio, so, a podcast like this, if you're bad on video, then you shouldn't be creating video.
Yeah.
Right? But if you're a really good writer, then write.
Right.
So my direction, especially within my team, so like with my personal trainers and stuff like that are trying to build their own business within Blended, I mean, my advice for them is that simple. It's like, do what you're comfortable with and what you're good at. Now, if you want to be great on video,
you got to do more video.
Then do more video. You'll become good at it. Hopefully.
Hopefully. That's the dream.
But I mean, lean into the things that you are good at and leverage those. And for some people, it's, I'm sure, I mean, I don't know the industry well enough to really, truly comment on this, I guess. But I'm sure that there are some realtors that, especially old school realtors, that only do open houses, and have exceptional success with it.
Those are the ones that are telling you that you shouldn't be wasting time doing, not that, it's just like everybody's good at what they're good at.
Exactly.
Right.
And do what works for you. That, going back to nutrition, same thing. That's my number one advice when people come in and sit down with me and they're like, oh, my friend's doing keto.
Doesn't matter.
Like, great. Do you plan on spending the rest of your life doing keto? And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay, let's talk about other options. And I mean, the reality of it is like one thing that works for someone does not necessarily work for you. And this goes back to that journey. And, people often will state like, oh, I had no success doing X, Y, Z. Like, no, but now you know.
Yeah, people undervalue that piece, don't they?
It's just part of the journey. It might take you a little longer to get there, but at the end of the day, you're still going to get there.
100%. And I found I read, I've been into Ryan Holiday. Do you know him? Ryan Holiday?
No.
It's Stoicism and Roman Empire, Marcus Aurelius. And anyway, one of his books, he's talking everybody's got a plan and they got a goal. But if you're too focused on, if you want to lose 50 pounds and all you're thinking about, maybe you wrote it on your wall or your goal chart or whatever, it's I'm going to lose 50 pounds. And you're just hyper focused on that 50 pounds. I need to lose that 50 pounds. Oh, I'm not losing weight, whatever. And then you kind of like doing your expansion. All of a sudden you're doing the expansion and you're not focusing on the lead funnel. Well, the same thing. If you're focused on your end goal, but you're not presently practicing the steps to get there, well, you're not really going to lose that 50 pounds, are you? So it's you have to, acknowledge this is your goal, and then you have to work towards getting there. And that's the most important part, is the journey.
100%.
And people don't get that.
Now we'll go down a different tangent. So I have this entire theory. I call it the hourglass theory, because most books, concepts, theories that we look at are based off of essentially a triangle, with the top of that triangle being results.
Mm-hmm.
I relate the top of that triangle to happiness. And the problem that we have as a society is that is a moment in time. So that top of the triangle is simply a moment. Losing 50 pounds is just that. It's a moment in time where absolutely you will be happy, right? But the reality of the world that we live in is that it's not a pyramid. It's not a triangle. Yeah. It's an hourglass. And every time we hit that moment, that hourglass flips. And the foundation of the hourglass is mindset. And the journey between your mindset and that moment of happiness is where we need to actually, and we do spend all of our time. And here's a few examples for you. Think of an infant. They learn to walk for the first time. They can't even communicate, but they learn to walk. And you can see in that moment in time, pure joy and happiness.
They're oh my God.
It's incredible watching, right?
Yeah, I've seen it.
That moment when they walk for the first time is a moment of happiness. We just walked into this room. You did not express that same gratitude for walking down the hallway as what an infant does walking for the first time.
Yeah, exactly. I was happy you're here, but not about walking.
You go back and graduate high school today or elementary school. Are you going to be happy? No, you've done that already. That was a moment in happiness of your life at that point in time. And that's why I believe that we all have these, not all, but so many people have these midlife crises. Because they graduate high school, they go to university, they finish university, they get married, they buy their first car, they buy their first home, they get their first promotion, they have their first kid, and then all of a sudden, then what?
Right.
So our life is made up of all these moments which accumulate to moments of happiness. And then all of a sudden, that slows down when we get into our late 30s and 40s.
Right.
Because these moments of happiness, that these goals that people are trying to achieve, slowly stop.
Or they're really far apart now.
Or they're further apart.
Because society told us we need to do XYZ things. So we're just...
And so they become unhappy. Right. And they have these midlife crises because they're like, oh my God, like what's wrong with me? Like, well, and it's like, I mean, this is your world. Do you know what's terrible? Moving.
Yeah.
Moving sucks.
It's the worst.
But if you go on social media and you look at a 25-year-old who bought their first home.
Oh, he's pumped.
You get to enjoy that.
I remember this is my first home right here.
That moment's amazing.
It was, yeah.
Doing it a second time, you dread the move.
Oh, hiring movers, buddy.
Yeah, you dread it. It sucks.
Man, I remember moving apartment to apartment, like as a student too, like university, like
it's terrible.
Maybe you lost a roommate, dropped out, didn't work out, whatever, or didn't like the landlord, didn't like the place. And it's like, every year it's like, first it was Residence, then it was McLean Street, then it was across the road with my brother on McLean Street, then it was down on Sherwood Street by the mall, and then it was down on Brunswick Street, and then we went to Kearney Lake, and then it was here.
Yep. So you've got I think I'm a big believer of this like hourglass concept that I've kind of created.
I think so too.
And, you take someone like Chris Bumstead.
Yeah.
Okay. So you take Mr. Olympia, and this year he won his 5th Mr. Olympia. So you go back to his first time winning. That was a moment of happiness. Yeah. There's a difference between someone like Chris and the rest of the people who have won Mr. Olympia in the past. And that is that after that moment finished, his mindset switched.
Back to work.
To that winning a second one in a row, man, that would bring me happiness. And I'm sure it did. And then it became a point where now, I don't know, Chris, so like this is an assumption, but I'm assuming that now he's at the point being like, do you know what would make me happy? Being the all-time best classic bodybuilder that's ever been. Win more times than anyone else has ever won. That moment. And for so many people, they win their first one, and it's like, did that, check.
Done. I'm out.
And then they fall into a rut. And all of a sudden, like, shit goes wrong, and, they're unhappy or depressed, and it's just a mindset. And you got to be finding what that next thing is, that next moment of happiness. And then you've got to understand the journey. That's there's a really good quote. There's like, you live and you die.
Yeah.
Right?
That's fact.
We all live and we all die. Everything in between is what matters.
Yeah.
And that happens with regards to achieving every moment of happiness. You set a mindset with something that's going to make you happy, achieving a goal, but everything between those two things is what really matters. And if you can figure that out, then the moment of happiness is still a great moment of happiness. But if that takes you 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think people are just in general too much in a rush, eh? But don't get me wrong, I got in real estate. I was like, I'm going to change my status on Facebook to realtor. Everybody's going to flock to me. I'll be a overnight success. Well, I guess I was wrong. Friends wouldn't even use me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing. And, but, the goal was to, bare minimum, replace my old Unilever income. I said I'd be happy if I can do that and work for myself.
And you've done that.
I've done it.
And now what?
Yeah.
You'll no longer be happy if that's what you continue to do every year.
Yeah. Now I want to be in the top 25.
Yep.
And then after that, I want to be number 1.
Yep.
And then after that, I'd like to have a team, the networked realty group, if I want to put it out there. And ideally be the best realtor in Halifax. I mean, I'm not aiming low. I got to, shoot for the stars, so.
But what you've got is you've got steps.
I got steps.
Right? And so, like, again, if the journey between A and B is 10 years, but you enjoy the process, then whether it takes you 10 years or 15 years doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
I say that with people when they're coming in for, like, to build off nothing with their fitness goals. And they come in and it's like, okay, my goal is to lose 50 pounds because, after we go through an in-body scan and we kind of assess what it is that they need to be at an ultimate level of health for longevity and so on and so forth, we sit there and I'll say, does this matter if it happens in 6 months or 6 years from now? Well, of course they want it in 6 months. But at the end of the day, in 10 years from now, 20 years from now, when I'm 60 and I look back, does it matter if it happened in 6 months or 6 years? No, it doesn't. It happened, right? And I'm independent at 80 years old. I win. But if I hit 12 goals between now and the next 5 years, and I just rattle them off, and at 80, I'm in terrible shape, I lose.
Right. Yeah, man. The goal, and I mean, I've watched it, and I'm sure, I think as a generation, I'm 35, you said you're a couple of years older than me. I'm sure it's a generational thing. Our parents just didn't care about anything to do with physical health or fitness, or at least not in my community.
Mine did.
Did they?
That's probably why I own
Well,
a
that's
gym.
good.
My mom still works out 4 or 5. Both my parents do, but my mom's in the gym doing CrossFit 4 or 5 days a week.
How old is she?
73.
Wow. So I'll skip to the tangent where I was going. I want to be on the mats at jiu-jitsu at 60 plus 70 years old, laying ass whoopings down on young kids that are what the fuck is this old guy doing? Excuse my language.
Yeah.
And if I can't, I mean, that's a pretty big goal. At least I want to be training still, but if I could still, teach some beginners a thing or two, it'd be nice to still be able to hang.
So basically what you're telling me with that being your goal is if you were you now, as you are today at 65,
Winning.
you'd be winning. So the reality of it is that your goal, again, making an assumption here, but you have a very different goal that is going to happen in the next 1 to 2 years.
100%.
Right? But that goal is irrelevant to 65-year-old goal that you just set.
Yeah, that's just a stepping stone to get to the 65.
That's all it is.
Goal.
It's maintenance. So
it's maintenance.
Let's say you've got a 2-year goal to get into black belt. I don't know anything about the sport. So
yeah, that's pretty reasonable. They want me to compete one more time, as my coach, my buddy Joel, said. I don't know if he's watching, but yeah, he said he wanted to see me compete once more this year before they promoted me to brown belt. And then it'd probably be a year or two-ish.
Okay. So
depending on training volume and all that to get the black belt.
Let's say
so you're pretty much bang on.
Let's say you break a leg.
Yeah, I've done it before. It sucks.
It sucks. But if you do, you're not going to reach that in 2 years.
No.
Does it matter with regards to the goal of being 65 years old and being able to still actively? Exactly.
No.
What does matter is that even with a broken leg, you continue doing what you can so that when your leg's healed up, you're not 20 pounds overweight. So your goal immediately changes, right? And your goal now becomes focused on, maybe some upper body goals, short-term goals that you could focus on that keep you moving, keep you driven, some nutrition goals that keep you aligned with the fact that you're probably going to be, not burning as many calories through activity.
You gotta tweak it.
Exactly. And then you kind of reset that mindset with regards to what's happened to you in this moment. And the goal at 65 is still there.
Yes, sir.
The problem we have is that you set a goal in 2 years from now, something gets in the way of it that's uncontrollable, out of your control, and people quit.
Yeah.
And when you quit on that goal and you end up 2 years down the road not having achieved it and 2 steps backwards, it is very difficult to get yourself back on track.
Yeah, you kind of failed yourself because you didn't, Do you have kids?
No.
Me neither. I was always curious, and my dad, I don't know if he watches these or not. He'd give everything up when he had me. He used to be great shape, short, a bit taller than me, short, stocky, growing up, I was I'm gonna be strong like my dad because he could, anything he touched it would move. It didn't matter what it was.
Old man strength.
Yeah, man. Just fisherman, electrician. And he's yeah. And then then I had you, and you give up playing, sports, and he used to do like underwater hockey, which I didn't even know was a thing. Like, yeah, it was weird. Look it up. It's weird. He used to do a ton of scuba diving, like softball, this and that, everything, and then just, well, I had a kid. I'm out. It's all about, and I mean, I appreciate it. We had a great life, played a lot of hockey, and, we didn't hurt for nothing. But just like, nothing. And then progressively, unfortunately, year over year, got a bit bigger. I mean, he's doing great now. He's, lost a bunch of weight. He's looking way better. But there was a huge gap where there was just work, come home, eat, sleep, work, repeat, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, where do you think, what happens that people just use those? Like, and I find I see it across, like, some people I know too, and I'm sure you may know some. Might have been in decent shape, have kids, all goes out the window, and it's like, oh, well, we had kids, we don't have time.
Well, I mean, we know the psychology around it. I mean, that's been, looked into for a long time. I mean, there's some really good books out there with regards to habits, Atomic Habit being one of them, where they discuss this concept of the habit loop, which is essentially there's a cue within the day that creates a routine and eventually a reward. Now, the reality of that habit loop is that when we break a habit, we typically reestablish a new habit to break it. So one of the times that we actually have more success with people that come into the gym that have been recently divorced, gone through a big breakup, someone close to them passed away, they just moved to the city, they quit smoking or drinking, and the reason is that something in their life changed. And in your dad's circumstance, that was that he had a kid. And in that moment in time, he reestablished new habits. And it just so happened that the habit that he broke was the habit of exercise and taking care of himself. And he let that go in order to replace that habit with taking care of you. And
which I am eternally grateful for,
but there's an answer to both, right? And so my wife has a really good, and I'll butcher this, so if she watches this, then I apologize, but this concept around a three-legged table. And that three-legged table is made up of your personal life, which is your family and stuff like that, your professional life, and then your social life. And when one thing in your life changes, in any of those three aspects, that table now becomes unbalanced and falls over, right? And the real goal in life is to figure out how to balance those legs so that table continues to stay standing. And so when we look at our life, and I'm a great example of this, actually. So like I moved to Vancouver, moved back, opened up the gym, didn't reestablish like a relationship with any of my high school or university friends when I moved back to Halifax because it was just like business immediately, working 16 hours a day. Don't have time. That was it. And for me at that point in time, that professional leg of mine became the one and only thing that I cared about.
A one-legged table.
My relationship with my friends and my family. And my family, like I'm very close to my family, but both of those suffered greatly. And I had one-legged table. And it was not good. And one thing that I've learned over the years is, and it's not easy. I mean, I still continuously struggle with it, depending, like COVID's a good time, right? A good time in the sense, good example.
Right.
Man, I think everyone at that moment of time struggled with trying to figure out how to balance those three legs, right?
Yeah, maybe they only had one.
Yeah, I mean,
because we were restricted too, right? So
I mean, there was a huge attempt that we were trying to make with regards to balancing, Zoom calls with your family to make sure that, everyone was okay, and with your friends that were single and home alone, right? And had nobody. It's like, man, that was a hard time. And
COVID ruined a lot of people.
It did. And it was because we couldn't balance that table. And when that table falls over, it's very challenging to rebuild it.
Yeah. Yeah, I got some experience with that too, for sure. And I'm the kind of guy, like, talking about Chris Bumstead. I met him at one of my last bodybuilding show. And when I got into bodybuilding, it was like hyper focus. like, okay, we're in this. I got to do XYZ things. Luckily, it's my wife's fault that I started because she was like, I want to try one of these fitness shows. And I was like, okay, really? And she's like, yeah. I was like, well, I guess I got to do it too because I can't have some other, meathead take my girl. But, it was like diet, 16 weeks. Like, I mean, we did it all wrong, really, looking back. But, did it, calorie deficit, lost the weight, got pretty ripped. But, I was focused on me, my goal. Well, what suffered? Well, I wasn't going out to this, wasn't going out to that. We couldn't go to dinner because it didn't fit the meal plan. Couldn't drink. That was a lot of empty calories. And if you're hungover, you can't go do your workouts. That's going to impede on your goals. So throughout the years of bodybuilding, powerlifting, a lot of my relationships struggled. Friendships mostly. Also, mom and dad and, relatives were like, well, Nan, they're wholesome people. We go to visit, and like Nan, all she could do to stuff your face is what she loves to do. I was like, no, I can't have that, Nan. She's like, well, why? I was like, well, I'm doing this bodybuilding competition. She's like, why? And it was just like a perpetual thing of like explaining myself. So it was like, eventually it was just like, all right, well, blinders on, just going to make it to the end. And then to like when I kind of dropped that and like intertwined myself or reconnected with these people, it was tough. Like, it did definitely hinder some relationships. And like, I'll be honest, it wasn't maybe particularly to the bodybuilding, but like over the years, like, people come and go and it's like, oh, well, you didn't want to be here for then, so maybe we don't want you around now. And that's a little harsh, but
a lot of people, I think, idolize the extremists in the world.
Yeah.
And so when we look at someone, like Elon Musk, we envy him for what he's accomplished. And at the same time, I don't know if you've read his book. It's really good. Just Elon.
I got it right there.
Yeah.
So when you dig through it, the whole thing, but
it's a big book.
Yeah.
But when you dig into his life, like that man has gone through
a lot of shit.
And, when you take the example of the three-legged table, right? He's lived a one-legged table. Like that's his life's been a single-legged table. We idolize it because he's been willing to give up the other two. I don't think that the average person, the majority of us, myself included, I don't want to live that single-leg table life. I mean, I'm amazed by the man. I find any of those individuals that are extremists, they have an attractive quality that draws us in and makes us pay attention to their life. But I don't want to live that life.
It's like I'm a huge David Goggins fan.
That man, that's a perfect example.
Huge.
That man is insane.
He's insane.
But would you really want to do what he does day to day?
I've tried. I did an ultra marathon January 27th. I haven't ran since. Hips fucked. Sorry. Like, I have to go get like physio. And I went like, 0 to hero, like, recreational, running here and there spottily throughout the year to starting to take it more seriously and ramped it up way too quick. And I'm just the kind of guy, I kind of get sucked in. It's like, are you going to try this race? It's like, I don't know. I haven't been running that long. And then you just keep doing it. It's like, how far can I go? And next thing I'm running like 46.4K for 7.5 hours. Longest run I'd done prior to that was 25 around the Bluff Wilderness Trail in Timberley.
Yeah.
And it's like, speaking of like, the goal and what's next. Well, I've kind of been like, if I want to share, like I've been in a bit of a rut in terms of like my, I got this neck injury that's kind of been in and out from jiu-jitsu. So that's why I've been doing more running. Now I did the ultra. So it's like, well, what's next? Do I want to do more running? Do I want to do more jiu-jitsu? But it's back to like, well, I don't want this neck to have to be like fused together when I'm 60. So what do I got to do to get?
So what my suggestion is like, you need to figure out what the long-term goal is. If that's the foundation, right, then you kind of have to figure out how to quantify some of the different metrics. So like for me, my long-term goal of being basically dependent at 80 years old is that I should weigh 180 pounds. That's basically more or less what I weigh today. Okay. When I weigh in every single Monday morning and when I'm 182, 183 pounds, I'm reflecting on like, okay, like what do I need to change in order to make sure that I like dial back a little bit? And I mean, when you're 2 or 3 pounds above like your goal weight, the changes that you need to make are nothing.
Very
like,
minimal.
Take the cream out of my coffee. Like,
Right.
you know.
Oh, did you go to the McDonald's drive-thru when you shouldn't have last week? Maybe I'm bad for that.
That's not in my yeah.
I'm a sucker
But
for
like
McDonald's.
it's
man.
tiny little tweaks.
Yeah.
And then similarly, when I get on the scale and I'm 177 pounds, also knowing that that doesn't achieve my goal at 80 because, you know, potential loss in muscle mass. Then I'm looking at it as like, did I drink enough water? Did I eat enough protein? Did I get all my workouts in this week? So like in grade 11, I weighed 180 pounds. Today, at 37, I weigh 180 pounds.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I graduated high school 185, and right now I'm like 183. I weighed myself this morning.
And well, here's the even crazier part to it. There's never been a point in time that I've seen 184 on the scale. And in the last, whatever that is, 20 year, my 20-year high school reunions this year. So in the last 20 years.
Shit, that means mine coming.
I've also not seen anything below 175.
Really?
So in 20 years, my weight has fluctuated somewhere within about 5 pounds. Because that's my foundational goal.
And you kept to it.
Yeah. And so in order for, let's say we'll use my wrist as an example. So like all my short-term goals with regards to any sort of like lifting or sports and stuff like that's gone for a few weeks, which realistically will mean gone for a few months. But my ultimate goal of staying around 180 means that I need to adjust my diet slightly. And also I just need to change my activity slightly. I mean, maybe I can't do push-ups, bench press, and cleans and snatches and stuff like that. But I mean, I can still squat, right? I can still get my heart rate up by, you know, I can't bike or row because I can't grip anything, but I can still run. So maybe I'm running a little bit more. I'm biking on a stationary bike with no, you know, not having to put my hands on anything. So there's always ways around it. You just need to know what that main goal is. Like, what's your number one goal in life? And everyone's number one goal in life should be the exact same. Health, longevity. If you have that as your number one goal, then everything else you're building off of. But you lose your health and you lose everything.
Yep. Yeah, man, like my Gramp, he was in great shape. Like, he'd run circles around my old man and me. And, like, unfortunately, cancer got him, and it's, like, 78. But he was still swinging a hammer. He was out tinkering in his garage every day, go walk with Nan.
That's the dream.
They were doing all, you know, tea at 10 a.m. You could show up. Even today, even Nan just home. 10 a.m.'s tea time. If you want to have tea, you could be a stranger off the street. Tea. Nan, she's, you know, in her 80s now, but she's still pretty mobile for, you know, I've seen people younger and not as good a shape.
Yeah.
So, like, I always modeled off after, you know, don't get me wrong, I've always looked up to Dad too. But Dad got up to a point he got quite big. And Grant, you know, he did, but he made the steps to correct it.
Yeah.
And then he was always like a pretty reasonably sized man. Like, well, you know, I guess kind of small, really. But man, when it come to working and doing stuff and being active, like, you know, I remember being young, like he'd tow us around on the snowmobile till it was like well into the dark in the winter. And like, you know, he'd be yanking that thing around if it got stuck. And, you know, he was in his 60s then. Just like didn't faze him, loved it because he could do it. So it's like, you know, we don't have kids now, and who knows if maybe we don't, maybe we do. See what happens, and maybe they have kids, maybe we don't become grandparents. But if I do get to that point, like I want to be there, just not there, you know? I want to be involved. So it's cool to know that that's something that other people have as a goal too, because I think not enough people think out that far.
Yeah.
Because I think the people that might be struggling a little bit maybe in their fitness or their health journey, I think if we would assume they might not be thinking that far out either, because otherwise they might be working a bit harder or making some slight tweaks to get there. But again, I mean, I shouldn't paint everybody with the same brush. Everybody's going through their different shit, but
Totally.
But anyways, man, I don't want to cut this short. I could talk to you for the rest of the day, to be honest. I really enjoy our chats, but I got an appointment I got to get to. But I think if anything I've learned from this conversation is just like, make your plans and don't give up. Just keep moving forward.
Full circle would be going back to dedication, determination.
Yeah.
Motivation only gets you so far.
That's it. Discipline turns the wheels. Yes, sir.
I love it. Thanks for having me on, Chris.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. We'll have you back. We'll dive into some deeper stuff next time.
Sounds good.
All right, man.